"Excuse me," she said gently. "I believe you're in my seat." The woman didn't look up right away. She was adjusting her silk scarf, glancing at her reflection in her phone camera. Then she turned, eyes narrowing. "I don't think so," she said, with a smirk. "This is 1A. The boarding gate of Flight 228 buzzed with the restless hum of impatience. People scrolled through phones, adjusted earbuds, and sighed at the delayed departure flashing on the monitor. Somewhere between gate announcements and the shuffle of carry-ons, the world felt like it was running late again. Dr. Alicia Monroe sat quietly in the corner, a black leather carry-on by her side, a paperback tucked under her arm. To most, she was just another traveler, composed, well-dressed, perhaps a university professor or consultant on a business trip. No one suspected she was the founder and CEO of Skirich Aviation Group, the airline they were all waiting to board. Alicia preferred it that way. Every few months, she flew anonymously, skipping the executive jet, blending into the crowd to observe her staff firsthand. She believed leadership wasn't about commanding from glass towers, it was about listening at eye level, especially when no one knew your name. Tonight's flight was from Los Angeles to New York, one she'd taken countless times before. But she'd chosen this particular flight because of recent customer complaints about staff behavior in first class. She wanted to see it herself. At the counter, a harried gate attendant was apologizing to an angry passenger about a missed upgrade. Alicia noticed the way his smile wavered, the strain in his voice. She took a quiet breath. The travel industry could be brutal, she'd lived that truth long before she ever owned an airline. Boarding Group 1 was called. Alicia rose, straightened her navy blazer, and walked to the gate. "Evening," she said warmly, handing over her pass. The attendant scanned it, blinked twice, and gave her a polite smile. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Monroe. Have a great flight." Her seat, 1A, window side, first class. The jet bridge smelled faintly of rain and jet fuel. The hum of the engines was a kind of music to her, steady, disciplined, alive. Each note reminded her of the first day she stood on a tarmac at 22, a newly hired engineer no one believed in. Inside the aircraft, soft instrumental music played over the speakers. Passengers in first class were settling in, a few business travelers on laptops, one elderly couple exchanging smiles, and at seat 1A, a white woman with glossy blonde hair and a champagne glass in hand. Alicia paused. Her seat. She smiled politely. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I believe you're in my seat." The woman didn't look up right away. She was adjusting her silk scarf, glancing at her reflection in her phone camera. Then she turned, eyes narrowing. "I don't think so," she said, with a smirk. "This is 1A. "It is," Alicia agreed, showing her boarding pass. 1A, Monroe. The woman gave a quick, incredulous laugh. "Oh, honey. You must be mistaken. These seats are reserved for SkyFirst Elite members. You can't just walk in from coach and pick one." Alicia's lips parted slightly, but her composure didn't shift. "I'm quite sure I'm in the right place." The woman leaned back, crossing her arms. "You people always try to push boundaries. Look, I'm not going to argue. Just find your seat in the back before I call the attendant." Passengers nearby began to glance over. A businessman in 2B frowned. A young couple exchanged uneasy looks. The tension was quiet but sharp, the kind that carried its own static. The flight attendant approached, sensing the friction. "Good evening, ladies. Is everything all right?" "This woman," the passenger said sharply, "is trying to take my seat." The attendant looked between them. "Ma'am, may I see your ticket?" The passenger waved her pass impatiently. "See? 1A. The attendant glanced at it. "Actually, ma'am, this says 7C. The woman blinked. "What?" "Yes, seat 7C, right here on your boarding stub." "That can't be right," the woman snapped. "I always sit in first class." "Check again." The attendant hesitated, voice careful. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it appears your upgrade didn't go through. You're welcome to your assigned seat. The woman's tone dropped cold. Do you know who my husband is? His firm represents this airline. You'll regret this if you embarrass me. The words hung like smoke. Alicia could feel the cabin grow still. The subtle undertone, this airline, embarrass me, twisted through the silence. The attendant looked nervous. Ma'am, please. The woman cut her off. No. I'm not moving. If she wants to play the victim, that's on her. But I'm not giving up this seat. Alicia remained standing, steady as a mountain. Her eyes, calm but unflinching, met the woman's. You're holding up the flight, she said softly. Please take your seat. The woman scoffed. Don't talk to me like that. You think because you're dressed nicely, you belong up here? Sweetheart, these seats cost more than some people's rent. A murmur rippled through first class. Someone began recording. The attendant shot a helpless glance toward the cockpit door. The woman snatched Alicia's boarding pass, waving it toward the attendant. Look at this. Probably fake. Some scammer printed it online. Give that back, Alicia said, voice firm but quiet. The woman smirked. You know what? Let's make this interesting. She held up her phone, camera recording. Go ahead, everyone. Watch what happens when someone tries to sneak into first class. The sound of whispers filled the cabin. One passenger muttered, "This is messed up." Another said softly, "Just sit down, lady." Before the attendant could speak again, a male voice came from behind. Calm, deep, with an edge of authority. Is there a problem here? The captain stood in the doorway of the cockpit. Tall, composed, his pilot's stripes glinting under the cabin lights. Yes, Captain, the woman said quickly, turning toward him. This woman is in my seat. She's refusing to move. Can you please handle this? The captain looked at her for a long moment, then at Alicia. His eyes flicked to the boarding pass still in the woman's hand. Then he spoke, voice measured. Dr. Monroe, he said, I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience. The woman blinked. Wait, what did you just call her? The captain met her eyes. Dr. Alicia Monroe. Founder and CEO of Skirage Aviation Group, the company that owns this aircraft. The silence that followed was absolute. The color drained from the woman's face. Her phone trembled in her hand. I didn't know, she stammered. Alicia took her boarding pass back gently. No, she said, eyes steady. You didn't care to. Every passenger was still. The businessman in 2B lowered his phone slowly, his expression somewhere between awe and shame. Alicia turned to the captain. Please have her escorted to her assigned seat. And make sure every passenger here receives the same respect, no exceptions. Yes, ma'am, the captain said softly. Security came a moment later. The woman, red-faced and trembling, tried to protest, but her voice faltered under the weight of her own arrogance. She walked down the aisle slowly, the same aisle she'd used to parade her entitlement minutes earlier. As she disappeared through the cabin door, Alicia exhaled quietly, her composure still unbroken. She turned to the passengers and smiled faintly. Now that we're comfortable, she said, let's get everyone to New York. For a moment, no one moved. Then, softly, applause began, a single pair of hands in row 2, then more. Soon the entire cabin was clapping. Some smiled in admiration, others out of relief. Cameras recorded, but for once, they weren't capturing drama, they were capturing dignity. Alicia sat down in 1A, adjusted her seatbelt, and gazed out the window. The rain streaked down the glass like threads of light. Somewhere behind her, a passenger whispered, "That's how you carry power." The engines hummed. The plane began to taxi. And above the noise of the cabin, Alicia's thoughts whispered back. Power isn't about being seen. It's about what you do when no one's watching. Respect doesn't come from titles or money, it comes from humility. The way we treat people when we think they're beneath us says more about who we are than any business card ever could. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who built the roof you're standing under. Respect doesn't come from titles or money, it comes from humility. The way we treat people when we think they're beneath us says more about who we are than any business card ever could. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who built the roof you're standing under. That afternoon, Alicia received a call from Good Morning America. Then the New York Times. Then Forbes. Everyone wanted her version. But she knew how these things worked. Once the world builds a symbol out of you, it wants you to perform like one. So she agreed to one interview. A week later, she sat in front of bright studio lights, microphone clipped to her jacket. The interviewer smiled warmly. "Dr. Monroe, thank you for joining us. The internet is calling you the woman who redefined first class. How does it feel?" Alicia gave a small smile. "Unexpected. I didn't plan to teach anyone a lesson that day." The interviewer leaned forward. "Yet you did. Millions are saying you stood for dignity without raising your voice. What was going through your mind in that moment?" Alicia paused. "Honestly? I was thinking about all the people who don't get a chance to defend themselves. The ones who get dismissed before they even speak. I've been one of them. And I promised myself, if I ever had power, I'd never let arrogance go unchallenged, but I'd do it with respect." The interviewer nodded. "Do you think the world is finally listening?" Alicia looked straight into the camera. "Only if we listen to the right thing. I wasn't fighting back, I was standing still. Sometimes stillness says more than shouting ever could." Clips of the interview spread just as fast as the original video. People posted side-by-side edits of her calm demeanor versus the passenger's anger, turning it into a modern-day parable. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Corporate trainers used it in seminars about unconscious bias. But while the world debated tone, privilege, and respect, Alicia kept working. Her focus shifted inward, to her own company. She called an emergency executive meeting. "Everyone's talking about equality," she said, "but let's make sure we're living it." Her voice filled the boardroom, measured, deliberate, unwavering. "Starting next quarter, we launch a diversity and leadership scholarship, full funding for underrepresented aviation students. We'll name it the Elevate program." The room broke into applause. Alicia smiled faintly. "And make sure every employee, from pilot to porter, receives updated empathy training. No one, and I mean no one, should feel unseen in our care." That decision turned viral attention into a movement. Donations poured in from business leaders, celebrities, and everyday travelers. Within a month, Elevate had funded 120 scholarships. But even as her public image soared, Alicia remained grounded. She kept a small photo on her desk, her younger self in a maintenance uniform, standing beside her first plane engine, hands dirty, eyes determined. It reminded her where she'd come from. And how far she still had to go. One evening, weeks after the chaos had calmed, Alicia flew again, this time from New York to Chicago. As she walked through the terminal, a teenage girl stopped her. "Excuse me," the girl said nervously. "You're Dr. Monroe, right?" Alicia smiled. "Yes. What's your name?" "Jasmine," the girl said. "I just wanted to say. I saw your video. I want to study aerospace engineering now. People told me girls like me don't do that. But seeing you..." Her voice cracked slightly. "You make me believe I can." Alicia's heart softened. She knelt slightly so they were eye to eye. "Then you already can," she said. "The moment you decide to rise, the world has to adjust." The girl grinned through tears. "Thank you." As Alicia walked away, she thought about how strange it was, one small moment on a plane had reached hearts she'd never meet. Maybe that was the point of influence, not to be admired, but to awaken something bigger than yourself. A month later, an envelope arrived at Alicia's office. No return address, just a name she recognized in trembling ink. Inside was a handwritten note. Dr. Monroe. I've spent weeks replaying that day in my mind. At first, I felt humiliated. Then I realized I should have felt ashamed. You showed me what dignity looks like when I had none to offer. I'm sorry. Not just for what I said, but for how I thought. I've started volunteering at a mentorship program for young women in aviation. It's not much, but it's a start. Grace Ellison. Alicia read it twice. Then she folded the letter carefully and placed it inside her desk drawer. She didn't need an apology, but she respected the courage it took to write one. People could change. Sometimes all they needed was a mirror that reflected who they could be, not just who they were. Power is not about putting others in their place, it's about knowing yours and standing there with integrity. You never know who's watching your reaction. The calmest voice in the storm can change more hearts than 1,000 angry words ever will. And respect? It doesn't require an audience. It begins the moment you choose grace over pride. The days that followed blurred into one long stream of interviews, meetings, and endless messages. Everyone wanted a piece of Dr. Alicia Monroe, the calm CEO who'd taught the world a lesson in respect. But fame, even when earned through dignity, can feel heavy. She moved through her office halls with her usual quiet grace, but the solitude afterward echoed louder than applause. Every article, every headline, every speech request painted her as an icon of composure, the woman who never flinched. What they didn't see was the exhaustion that came from always having to be that person, the one who held herself still while others lost control. One evening, long after her team had gone home, Alicia sat in her office with the city lights glowing against the glass. Her reflection looked tired, older somehow. She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Her phone buzzed again, another notification. A new viral edit of her clip had been posted with orchestral music and captions like "How to handle disrespect with class." She smiled faintly but shut the screen off. People loved turning real moments into symbols, but they rarely asked what it cost to stay calm when your heart wanted to rage. A knock at the door broke the silence. Jordan stepped in with 2 cups of tea. "You're still here." "So are you," Alicia said. He chuckled. "I could say the same. You've got a full week ahead, Forbes panel, leadership summit, university commencement." Alicia nodded absently. "They want the story, not the truth." Jordan frowned. "Isn't that the same?" "Not always," she said quietly. "The story is what people see. The truth is what it took to get there." Jordan set the tea down and hesitated before speaking. "You could take a break. The Elevate program's off to a strong start. You've done enough for now." Alicia looked out the window. "When I was 22, I had to fight to be taken seriously in every meeting. I told myself if I ever got here, I wouldn't waste a minute. I just didn't realize how much being seen would take out of me." Jordan watched her for a moment. "You've changed a lot of lives already." She smiled softly. "Maybe. But I don't want people to just clap for what I did. I want them to think about why they did." The tea went cold between them, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. Later that night, as Alicia left the building, her driver pulled up to the curb. A light drizzle dusted the street. She got into the back seat and glanced out at the city, people moving, lights flickering, stories crossing each other like invisible wires. At a red light, she saw a woman outside holding a cardboard sign, "Former flight attendant. Lost job. Need help." Alicia's chest tightened. She lowered the window and called out softly, "Ma'am?" The woman turned, startled. Her uniform was old, the name tag still pinned. "Yes?" Alicia handed her an envelope from her bag. Inside was enough to restart a life. "Take this," she said. "No one should have to beg to belong in the skies they once helped others reach." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "God bless you, miss." Alicia smiled. "He already has. Be safe." The light turned green. The car rolled forward. As the city receded behind her, she thought of her mother's words from years ago, "Respect isn't a performance. It's what you give when no one's clapping. For weeks, she kept to herself. She turned down interviews, avoided press events, and instead focused on visiting security training centers quietly. She wanted to see her employees up close, to listen. At one hangar in Dallas, she met a young maintenance engineer named Raphael who reminded her of herself. His hands were covered in grease, his voice uncertain when she asked about his work. "I'm still learning," he said, nervous. "I know I'm not great yet." Alicia smiled. "Neither was I when I started. Greatness doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from refusing to stay small." He looked up, surprised. "You really mean that?" "I built this company from mistakes that taught me patience," she said. "Don't be afraid to fail, just make sure you grow every time you do." That night, she stayed at a modest hotel near the hangar. No entourage, no press. Just peace. But the next morning, the quiet didn't last. Jordan called early. "You need to see this." A video had gone viral again. This time, it wasn't hers. A scary flight attendant had been recorded mocking a disabled passenger who needed extra assistance boarding. The clip was spreading fast. Alicia's heart sank. "Which flight?" "Chicago to Denver." "Bring the crew in," she said. Hours later, the employees involved sat before her in the conference room. Alicia didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. "I built this company on the belief that respect is our fuel," she said quietly. "If we forget that, we don't deserve to fly." The attendant who had mocked the passenger began to cry. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," Alicia said softly. "You meant it in the moment. And that's the moment that matters most, when you think no one's watching." There was silence. Alicia took a breath and leaned forward. "We can fix errors in flight paths. We can't fix arrogance unless we face it." She dismissed them with a warning, not termination. "Learn. Then teach others better." When they left, Jordan looked at her. "You could have fired them." Alicia shook her head. "Shame doesn't heal. Awareness does." That evening, she sat alone again, thinking about the strange pattern her life had taken, from a woman judged in first class to a woman expected to define it for everyone else. People called her unshakable, but they didn't see the nights she questioned if the world was really changing, or just applauding for a moment before forgetting again. Later that week, she visited a community college in Atlanta where the first Elevate scholars were beginning classes. When she stepped into the auditorium, students erupted into cheers. She smiled, but her eyes found one girl near the back who didn't clap. She just watched quietly. Afterward, Alicia approached her. "You didn't join the applause," she said gently. The girl looked down. "I just didn't want to cheer for someone I don't know yet." Alicia chuckled softly. "Fair enough. What's your name?" "Lauren." "Lauren," Alicia said, "don't ever clap out of pressure. Save your applause for truth. The world needs more people who think before they echo." Lauren smiled a little. "Thanks. I guess I've just been told I don't belong in programs like this." Alicia met her eyes. "You're here. That means you do. Don't let anyone make you earn your own worth twice." Lauren nodded slowly. That small exchange reminded Alicia why she had started everything, not for attention, but for possibility. That night, as she boarded a return flight home, she noticed a young crew member adjusting a nervous passenger's seatbelt with care. The simple kindness made her smile. For every loud mistake, there were hundreds of quiet moments of grace that no one recorded. She thought of the viral video again, how the world had frozen on one frame of her life, turning it into a story. But real character wasn't built in headlines. It was built in those quiet, unseen gestures. As the plane lifted into the clouds, she leaned back and closed her eyes. The world outside was chaotic, opinionated, always watching. But above it all, at 30,000 feet, there was peace. Because dignity doesn't need noise to exist. It just needs people willing to live it, even when no one's filming. Somewhere in that stillness, Alicia realized she didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not as a CEO, not as a woman, not as a symbol. Just as a human being doing her best to make the world a little kinder than she found it. And that, she thought, was more powerful than any headline ever written. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of Skirich's headquarters, casting golden reflections on the glass conference tables. The world had moved on from the viral video, but its shadow lingered. People still whispered, still pointed her out in airports, still expected every word from her to be flawless. Fame, Alicia was realizing, wasn't always applause. It could be a mirror that followed you everywhere, even when you just wanted to breathe. That Monday, she had a full schedule: investor meetings, media calls, and a community outreach review. But her mind was somewhere else. Something had been bothering her, a quiet worry that her company was becoming what she once fought against. Skirich had grown fast. New money, new faces, new egos. The same arrogance that once tried to push her out of a seat was now sneaking into the culture she built. During a leadership meeting, she sat listening as executives discussed luxury upgrades and influencer collaborations. It was all about image. No one mentioned the values that started it all. "Let's partner with that celebrity travel vlogger," one VP said. "We'll get millions of new eyes on us overnight." Alicia tilted her head slightly. "And how does that serve our customers?" There was an awkward pause. "Well, it boosts engagement," he said. "Engagement isn't service," Alicia replied calmly. "It's attention. And attention fades." The room went silent again. She took a breath, looking around. "Do you know why I built this airline? It wasn't to look rich, it was to make dignity affordable. Every person who steps on our planes should feel seen, not sized up." A quiet voice from the corner spoke up. It was Nora, one of the newer executives. "But Dr. Monroe, people like luxury. It makes them feel important." Alicia smiled faintly. "Then we've failed to teach them what real importance is. It's not in reclining seats or champagne glasses, it's in respect. Without that, first class is just a bigger cage." After the meeting, Jordan walked beside her down the corridor. "You were quite angry in there," he said. "I wasn't angry," Alicia said. "Just disappointed. We're forgetting who we are." "Maybe that's just growth," he suggested. She shook her head. "Growth shouldn't mean losing your core. If it does, you're just inflating, not expanding." Later that day, she visited the Skirich Mentorship Center, a small office that helped fund aviation scholarships. There she met a young man named Darren, one of the first Elevate scholars who had just completed pilot training. He grinned wide when he saw her. "Dr. Monroe. I didn't think I'd actually meet you." Alicia laughed softly. "You earned your spot, Darren. I'm just here to say congratulations." He hesitated, then said, "Honestly, ma'am, I almost quit last year. Some people said I only got the scholarship because I fit the diversity quota." Alicia's smile faded. "And what did you tell them?" "I didn't say anything. Just kept working. I figured success would answer them for me." She nodded, her eyes steady. "You did exactly what I did. But let me tell you something, silence can protect your peace, but it can also protect injustice. The world doesn't change until someone speaks, even if their voice shakes." He nodded slowly. "I'll remember that." As she left, Alicia felt a spark of the fire she'd once had when she built Skirich from scratch. But she also felt the weight of what came next. If the company was losing its way, she'd have to steer it back herself. That night, she called an emergency leadership retreat. "No assistants, no PR team," she said firmly. "Just us. We need to remember who we are." They gathered at a small mountain lodge 2 days later. The air smelled of pine and rain. For the first time in years, there were no cameras, no presentations, no staged smiles. Alicia spoke to them not as a CEO, but as a founder who refused to let her vision decay. "When I was a little girl," she began, "my mother told me something I'll never forget: titles don't make you worthy. How you treat people does. Somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing people and started seeing profiles. One of the executives shifted uneasily. Dr. Monroe, it's not that simple anymore. The world moves fast. Image sells. Alicia nodded. Then maybe we slow down. Maybe we stop chasing applause long enough to earn trust. She paused, then walked to the window. The valley below was quiet, serene. The problem isn't that people are arrogant, she continued. It's that they think they have to be to survive. But real strength looks like grace under pressure, not pride and privilege. Jordan stood by the wall, watching her, quietly proud. This was the woman who built something out of nothing, who refused to bow to condescension, and who now stood teaching others what leadership truly meant. That evening, as everyone sat by the fire, Alicia told them the story of the viral incident again, but not the version the world saw. I wasn't calm because I didn't feel anger, she said. I was calm because anger wouldn't have changed her. Only truth could. But the truth isn't just spoken, it's lived. Every day, in every seat, every ticket, every decision. Her words hung in the air. Some executives looked thoughtful. Others guilty. For the first time, she felt like they were truly listening. The next morning, Alicia woke early and took a walk through the misty woods behind the lodge. She carried her phone but didn't check it. Instead, she listened to the quiet. Her thoughts drifted to all the people she'd met along the way, the old maintenance worker who once told her, "You've given us wings," the child who'd written her a letter saying she wanted to be a pilot because you smiled on TV. Sometimes, she realized, you don't get to choose what inspires people. You just choose how honestly you live, and let your example do the rest. When they returned from the retreat, things began to change. Skirich launched Project Compass, a new initiative that focused on ethical travel and equal opportunity hiring. The ads weren't glamorous. They didn't show champagne or red carpets. They showed kindness, crew members helping elderly passengers, pilots greeting children in the cockpit, simple moments that defined humanity in motion. Some critics called it soft branding. Alicia called it the truth. But as her influence grew again, so did scrutiny. One evening, Jordan came to her office with an envelope. This came from one of our shareholders. Anonymous, but threatening to leak private emails about company operations. Alicia raised an eyebrow. What emails? Apparently one of your early partnerships had a disputed environmental impact report. They're saying if you don't step down, they'll release it. Alicia leaned back, thoughtful. So the same people who once ignored me are now trying to silence me. Jordan nodded grimly. What are you going to do? Alicia stood, her voice calm but firm. The same thing I always do, tell the truth. You can't be blackmailed by honesty. That night, she wrote a public statement herself. She didn't let her PR team polish it or dilute it. Transparency, she wrote, isn't a weakness. It's the foundation of trust. If we made mistakes, we own them. That's how we fly forward. The next morning, her statement went live. Critics praised her integrity. Investors hesitated, but the public stood behind her stronger than ever. Moral strength, she learned, was louder than any scandal. And as the days passed, she realized something deeper. This wasn't just about one company or one flight. It was about reminding people everywhere that dignity doesn't fade when power shifts hands. It endures because it's real. When Alicia left the office that night, she stopped by the airport to catch a late flight home. No entourage, no spotlight. Just her, standing in line like everyone else. And when the gate agent greeted her with a tired smile, Alicia returned it warmly. Thank you for your hard work, she said. The woman blinked in surprise. You're Dr. Monroe, aren't you? Alicia nodded. Just Alicia tonight. As she boarded, she looked down the aisle, rows of faces, tired travelers, strangers side by side. Every seat had a story. Every person carried a life unseen. And in that quiet realization, Alicia smiled. The flight took off into the dark, but she wasn't thinking about altitude anymore. She was thinking about grace, and how sometimes, the highest flights start from the humblest places on the ground. Rain slid down the windows of the private terminal as Alicia stood by the glass, watching a Skirich jet taxi across the runway. It had been 1 year since the viral flight, 1 year since a simple moment of grace changed everything. But the world, as always, had moved on. The headlines had faded. The comments slowed. What remained were the quiet ripples, lives touched, doors opened, and a company rebuilt on something stronger than profit. She'd learned that real leadership wasn't about being admired. It was about being remembered for how you made people feel when power wasn't in your favor. And though the noise had faded, the meaning hadn't. Jordan walked in carrying 2 coffees, his usual morning gesture. "You still get up earlier than the sun," he said, handing her a cup. "Old habit," she replied with a small smile. "The sky looks different before everyone wakes up. Peaceful. Honest." He chuckled. "You sound like a pilot again." "I guess I never stopped being one," she said softly. "Just started flying from a different seat." They watched the plane lift into the clouds, its wings slicing through the gray. "Remember that first video?" Jordan said. 40 million views. "I thought it'd ruin us at first. Now it's a case study in every leadership seminar." Alicia laughed lightly. "Funny how the world works. It'll cheer for you one moment, test you the next. The trick is to not lose yourself in either." Jordan nodded, thoughtful. "You ever regret it? Speaking up that day?" She sipped her coffee. "No. If I'd stayed silent, I'd still be sitting there, shrinking into the comfort of fear. Sometimes a moment chooses you, and what you say in it defines the rest of your life." He smiled. "Well, it defined this company, too." Alicia turned back to the glass. "Then we better keep earning that definition." Later that morning, she visited the main Skirich training facility. The Elevate scholars were graduating, the first full class since the program began. She walked into the hangar, greeted by rows of young men and women in crisp uniforms. Their faces glowed with pride, nerves, and the kind of hope that could light up an entire generation. Alicia stepped onto the small stage. No press. No teleprompter. Just her, a microphone, and people whose dreams had found wings. "When I first started flying," she began, "I didn't have the right connections. I didn't have the look some people thought a pilot should have. But I had determination. And I learned something early on: when people tell you you don't belong, they're really saying they can't see beyond their own limits. Don't make their blindness your burden." The room fell silent. She continued, "You're here because you earned it. And one day, you'll be sitting where I am, watching others rise. When that happens, remember this: success means nothing if you forget to lift others on your way up." A young woman in the front row raised her hand shyly. "Dr. Monroe, do you ever stop feeling like you have to prove yourself?" Alicia smiled warmly. "The day I stopped was the day I realized I already had. Not to others, to myself." Applause swelled, but she didn't bask in it. She looked at their faces, the future pilots, engineers, mechanics, and saw something that reminded her of her younger self: hunger, humility, and the raw courage to dream in a world that often doubts the unfamiliar. After the ceremony, she stayed behind, walking through the rows of aircraft simulators. Lauren, the quiet girl from months before, ran up to her. "Dr. Monroe," she said, breathless. "I got accepted into Skirich's pilot program. I wanted to thank you. You told me not to let anyone make me earn my worth twice." Alicia's eyes softened. "And you didn't. I'm proud of you, Lauren." Lauren hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. When that video of you went viral, my mom showed it to me. She said, 'This is how you stand tall without shouting.' I didn't understand then, but now I do. You didn't win that day because you were powerful, you won because you stayed kind." Alicia's throat tightened. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." After Lauren left, Alicia stood alone between the simulators. She thought of all the moments that had brought her here, the humiliation, the calm, the truth, the rebuilding. Life, she realized, had a way of turning wounds into windows. She walked outside, where the sun was breaking through the clouds. A group of maintenance trainees waved from a distance, one of them holding up a small sign, "Thank you for teaching us to fly right." She laughed softly, waving back. That night, back in her office, Jordan found her staring at the city lights again. "Long day?" he asked. "Long year," she said with a quiet smile. "But a good one." He leaned on the doorway. "You know, the board's been talking about expanding Skirich internationally. They want you to lead the initiative personally." She looked thoughtful. "Expansion's good. But not if it means forgetting why we started. We're not just in the business of flying, we're in the business of human dignity. I want that to reach farther than our planes ever could." Jordan grinned. "That sounds like you." As he left, Alicia sat down and opened her journal, a habit she'd never dropped. She wrote 3 words across a fresh page: "Grace sustains altitude." Outside, lightning flashed across the skyline, thunder rolling like a distant drumbeat. She felt its echo deep in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace, not because the world understood her, but because she no longer needed it to. Weeks later, at a small airport in Colorado, Alicia boarded a commercial flight. No private jet, no assistants. Just her and a simple ticket, seat 23A. She smiled as she settled by the window. Across the aisle, a young man struggled to fit his bag into the overhead bin. Alicia stood to help him. "Thank you," he said, surprised. "Most people wouldn't bother." She smiled. "Everyone needs a hand sometimes." He didn't recognize her, and she preferred it that way. As the plane took off, she looked out the window, the clouds glowing pink in the sunset. Somewhere between earth and sky, she thought about all the noise, all the fame, all the judgment, and how small it all seemed from up here. What mattered wasn't that she'd once owned an airline. It was that she'd owned her voice, her dignity, her peace. Because true power isn't loud, it's steady. It's the calm you carry when the world tries to shake you. When the plane leveled at cruising altitude, the intercom crackled. A familiar tone of professionalism filled the air. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Flight 327. Our cruising altitude today is 35,000 feet. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey." Alicia smiled. The voice sounded young, confident, proud. It was Lauren. Tears welled in Alicia's eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. She just sat there, listening to the student she once encouraged now leading the sky she once fought for. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "That's what legacy feels like." As the clouds drifted past and the horizon opened, Alicia felt light, free, finally, from proving anything to anyone. And in that quiet cabin high above the world, she knew, respect, when earned honestly, doesn't just last. It lifts. Sometimes, life tests your patience in the most public ways, but your calm is your crown. Don't let the world's arrogance make you smaller, stand tall with quiet grace. Because when you lead with dignity, you don't just rise, you help others learn to fly.